melech ha'olam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen. To be engaged in the study of Torah. So this week's Parsha is called Vayetzei, and it means, and he went out, or he left. And the he who they're referring to is Jacob. And I know a lot of you are, pretty Torah savvy. So can anybody, remind us why Jacob is leaving, and if you know where he's headed, where is he going? Why is Jacob leaving? Who knows?
Jacob is leaving because his mother, Rebecca, told him to get out because he deceived his father, Isaac, for the blessing. And she's afraid that his brother Esau is going to kill him because Esau, cursed against him. And he's going back to Aram to find succor and a shelter and 2 wives eventually for Rebecca's brother, in the house of Rebecca's brother Laban.
Exactly. So he's leaving, he's going back to where, if I don't know if you study with me in Torah study, or if when you went to Torah study, you remember that Abraham sent his servant to find a wife, and he went to this exact same place, to this family, and found Rebecca, and her brother Laban was there. At that time, he was, her older brother. They don't mention that he had a family yet, but now he's returning many years later. And it's interesting because I was looking at the text. This is not this one, it's last week's. And it said that Esau was 40 years old when Isaac said, give me the blessing, which means Jacob was 40 years old because they're twins. So it's not like he was a young man. I mean, it's interesting. He wasn't a kid. Like, you think of him as kind of like a late teenager or somebody in his 20s. But according to the text, and, they play with age because it's not always consistent, as we know. But it says that Esau was 40 at this time when, Isaac asked him to get ready to get the blessing. So that means Jacob was 40 because they're twins. In any case, yes, Susan.
I have one thing, and this just came to my attention last week. The Torah said that Isaac was 40 when he married Rebecca, and Esau was 40 when he married the Hittite women. Although It sounds like that came before Jacob, but anyway, they're all, so 40 must be some kind of a number.
Well, we know it is 40 days and 40 nights, 40 of the flood, 40 years in the desert, 40 days that Moshe was up on the Mount Sinai's 40. So 40 means a lot.
Something important.
Something important, but we don't necessarily know that it's always literally 40. Anyway, as soon as Jacob leaves and he crosses the Jordan or the Euphrates, he crosses a river, it's not clear, but he's on his way to what would be today Iraq. He has a spiritual experience. And we're going to look at that spiritual experience. And I would like to focus on the character of Jacob. I think Jacob is a very interesting character because we are all the children of Israel. As we know, that becomes his name. And Jacob is a very flawed human being. He has a lot of foibles. He has a lot of weaknesses like we do. And it's interesting that, we say we're descended not of Abraham, not of Isaac, but of Jacob, of Israel. We call ourselves the children of Israel. Our country, our homeland is Israel or whatever. And it's a person who does struggle with his impulses. So I want to put up the text, and we're going to read a little bit of it, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. So it's right here, and I have it in Hebrew too. Okay. So,
hello.
Yeah, Miriam, turn on your.
Sorry. Mute. Yes. On mute.
Okay. Who would like to read this first part, like the first page, and then we'll talk about it. And also, I just want to point out, Jacob left Beersheba and went out for Haran. So they were living in Beersheba, a city that still exists today. Just imagine. Took place like 1800 BCE or 1700 BCE, according to some calculations. And there was Beersheba, still already there, established actually by Abraham, according to the tradition. Okay, who would like to read? Okay, Jeff.
He came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream, a stairway or ramp, others ladder.
And those are possible translations of this word sulam in Hebrew. Go ahead.
And was set upon the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. And the Lord was standing beside him, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you and to your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread. Where are we?
Here, remember, I am with you.
Remember, I am with you. I will protect you. I have to move the page over a little bit. I can't. Hold on. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go. He will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is present in this place, and I did not know it.
Okay, so let's stop there for a minute. Let's see, stop share. Okay, so let's look at this dream. This is a very famous dream. A lot of art is made of this dream. And actually, what's his name? I have it right here. Oh, yeah. Robert Alter, who has a new translation, he doesn't even call them angels. He calls them messengers. He literally translates, because the word malach could be messenger or angel. And so,
excuse me, could you please just tell me the chapter and verse? I want to look at it in my own book.
yes, it's chapter, it's Vayetzei, it's Genesis, and it's chapter, I'll tell you right now, I'm opening it up. Vayetzei.
28.
28.
28.
28.
Thank you.
28 in the book of Genesis.
Okay.
What do you make of these angels going up? First of all, they go up and then they go down. They don't come down and then go up. They go up and then they come down. So what do you make of that image or that in the dream? What can that mean, do you think? You have any ideas?
Receiving instructions.
Okay, so why angels going up and down?
Well, what I've heard is that from before is that there are angels with us for specific tasks. And one of the angels was with him as he was leaving before he comes to this place that they don't name. And then another will go with him, and that goes up. Another one will leave him going down. The going down one will be with him when he crosses over. But it also could be like his conscience, as we see later on, his alter ego when he wrestles with an angel. So it could be some set of Jacob leaving his old home and then the other one coming down to accompany him.
But why? Okay, that's interesting. But I have heard that there are geographical angels, like some are in this country, some are in that. But why do you need more than one? I'm curious. Where's Lorraine? Oh, Lorraine, you raised your hand. You're muted.
Apologies. I was going to say that I also heard in the past that it was demarcated as a boundary, that he was entering and leaving a particular space, a land, and that's why the angels marked that spot to go up, and some of them left, and then some of them went down to mark that boundary. But I wanted to say that since you opened it up on that particular piece, what resonated me from the words of God was the escalation of the promise to Jacob, whereas he not only promised the land as he had before to the other patriarchs, but he also said, and you're going to go beyond that land. Your children are going to go to different directions. And that to me was even a bigger promise.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Donna, I don't see you right now, but you had your hand up?
Yeah, hi. I think as above, so below, as within, as without. God is everywhere, omnipresent, and it's just different levels of the universe, the galaxies, and where the boundaries and land where he was at that time. But going up and down the ladder, he said, "I won't let go of the angel to wrestling with the angel till you bless me."
That's
And
later though.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's later. But I just think as above, so below.
Okay, anyone else? Miriam? You're muted. Where are you? What happened to you? Now you're disappearing.
Top right.
Okay, Pamela, I'll come back to, Miriam, yeah, go ahead, then Pam.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted.
Okay. What I heard was that why shouldn't the angels be descending from heaven? So why should it not be written? They came down and they went up. On the contrary, it was written. They went up and came down, went up and came down.
Right.
So what I did hear as one of the Medrashim was that the angels are on the ground surrounding us. They are all around us here on the ground. We do not recognize them. We recognize them only when they do chesed, rachamim, when they do kind deeds and are full of compassion. But they are here, and it is for them to go up first and then come down. They are angels in the garb of human beings.
Okay, I like that. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, Pam.
Well, a couple of thoughts. My first thought was really just a question. When we say angels going up and down, are they the same ones? Or does one go up and come down and then another and comes up? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's a good question, but it's in the plural. So there's like a group of angels going up and then there's other ones coming down. But you're right. It's not clear. Are they the same ones going up and coming down?
so I had that question, but then I'm wondering, are they kind of like his prayers going up to God?
Is he praying? No, he's really not praying.
But maybe they're like, I mean, there's a way to pray to say, oh, dear God, please, blah, 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 right? The sort of the conscious, right? But he went to sleep. So I'm almost thinking it's more like the subconscious prayer in your heart, because, we know, or we've been told that the up and the down, it's not an accident that it didn't say down and up, right? Like, it's not like someone's coming down and checking on you and reporting back.
Right.
It's emanating from the earthly sphere. So I'm wondering if it's like the prayers in his heart, because he's leaving and he has a lot of uncertainty, right? So what do we all do in times of uncertainty? We say, in our hearts, we're hoping that things are going to go well or whatever. So I kind of feel like it's almost like the quest, a sort of unspoken, unconscious prayer to the divine.
Wow, that's great. I like all of these are like written nowhere. These are your own ideas. They're really interesting and they're good. Yes, Merle.
I'm thinking along like what Pamela just said, that somehow he was asleep, but there's some kind of messages that the angels are taking up with them, and that's why they're going up. And when they come back down, they're waiting for more messages. It's like they delivered those messages or those prayers or whatever's going on in his head that we don't know about, and they come back down to get more information.
like that's really interesting too. So both of you are kind of saying it's his unconscious or his prayers or his thoughts or his requests going up, toward to the next world, and then coming down either with answers, reassurance, or some idea that you're not alone. Things are going up, but blessings are coming down as well. Pam.
What did we miss when we left?
Well, another question that I had in point of history, and I'm apologies for my ignorance, but had we gotten to the place in history where we have a direct connection to God, or do we still have intercedence between humans and God?
It's in the text that Abraham and God spoke, that Isaac prayed to God for his wife Rebecca to have a child. So no, there was this idea of communicating to God, speaking to God, and the part that's unique in the Bible is that people get answered. They hear answers. So no, it's not.
So this is like maybe the way that in this story, the way that communication is. What's the word I'm looking for? Transmitted.
Great. Okay, Jeff, and then Brad.
Well, it's interesting you talk about communication when the need for understanding of it is such importance. And the issue is, if God is truly omniscient and omnipotent, all is known. The historical pattern of the future is well known and outlined already. And the fact that we are here and attempting to intercede or change things in our own choices makes that communication a little flawed, in a sense, that we are in essence striving in a certain direction, which may not be the ultimate direction that we are supposed to go in, due to the omniscient one who sets everything in motion. So it's kind of, our understanding of what we would like that level of communication to be between us and God, and a responsiveness to ourselves.
Yes, I agree with you, the Talmud and the rabbis are very clear that we have free will and free choice, and that different things may happen depending on the choices we make. That is, God may say, no, if you make this choice, things will work out, and that choice, things won't work out. Doesn't mean God is manipulating our choices. Also, we know Abraham argued with God about Sodom and Gomorrah and tried to change God's mind, and God conceded. It just didn't happen that there were even 10 people worthy of being saved, but there was an argument. And also Moses talks God out of destroying the people a number of times when God is fed up. So it seems like there's wiggle room here. It's not necessarily all set in stone and all preordained, because we see it in the Torah that God was malleable or able to be reasoned with or changed or persuaded, even though God was set on a certain way. Okay, Brad.
Well, I guess I'm looking at this much less philosophically and metaphorically as all the rest of you. I'm taking it at face value that this is a dream, and as a dream, it lacks, it doesn't speak necessarily to reality. It is a vision. It is and all of our dreams have fantasy elements to them. So that raises the question then about the message of the dream, and to what extent do we take that as a truth, and to what extent do we take that as a wish and as a dream? I mean, is certainly repeated many times in the Torah about what our future holds. But why is that? Why is it repeated so often? Is it because it isn't necessarily accepted as a reality? Or is that, again, a wish, a dream, all part of a dream sequence?
You know, I think it's a really good point and a really good question. And I think we have to start with, how do we view the Torah? Do we view the Torah as, words from God? Do we view the Torah as divinely inspired? People wrote it, but it was from God. Or do we view the Torah as written by men? Or there's even a thought maybe a woman wrote some of it, who are recording and our culture, our tradition, and our history and our belief system. Because biblical scholars, more secular but Jewish biblical scholars, will say that this tiny nation of Israel, or Canaan, which was located between these massive civilizations, Egypt, Iran or Persia at the time, and Iraq or Mesopotamia. I mean, it was so small, it's smaller than the state of New Jersey, that the writers were like reinforcing that, yeah, we're small, we're conquered, times are tough, we're constantly being overrun by Egypt, by Babylonia, by Assyria, but God is with us. God has blessed us. We have this promise and this legacy, which they believed, but also needed desperately to keep people from giving up, from despair. So there's that idea that this is a very important piece. I think it sustains you when you're a minority and you're, small little people, that you have this sense of purpose or meaning or blessing. So there's that level. And then, on the other hand, in the Torah, by the writers of the Torah, the dreams seem to have meaning. They seem to be prophecy. They seem to not just be wishes or whatever. Joseph's dreams completely come true. He has so many dreams, they all come true. So it seems like dreams in the Torah are not just wish fulfillments, but prophecy by the writers of the Torah. So there's those two ideas. I want to add my thought, which is kind of a Hasidic thing that I read, that, and my own thought with it. Jacob is kind of on the cusp of being moral and immoral or amoral. He just stole his brother's birthright. And when his mother told him to do it, he didn't say it's wrong. He said, what if I get caught? He's not the most upright guy. And now he's going to start a new part of his life. And the Hasidim say, that the angels ascending talk about how we can ascend toward holiness or toward, meaning and purpose and fulfilling our lives one rung at a time. But I also I was thinking that it sort of is telling Jacob, you have a choice now to ascend and elevate or descend and degrade yourself. You have, you're kind of in no man's land. You're in the middle, but now are you going to ascend? Are you going to elevate? You're going to be better? Or are you going to stay the same or even go worse down into your degradation? And he kind of does both as we follow his life after this. So, and then in the next week, he wrestles with that. That's the whole wrestling with God thing. So that's one of my thoughts that came to me, but I love everyone's. I think everybody's that's what I love about Torah and Judaism. There's so many and they can all be valid. Yes, Jeff.
It's interesting because when we look at the patriarchs, whether male or female, there is an alteration. They start out as flawed human beings in one way or another.
Yes.
And then eventually, either emotionally and educationally and by action, evolve into that more spiritual level. And that's what we venerate about these people, because we each have the opportunity to do the same thing as beginning as flawed individuals. And it's almost a learning lesson that you take away with you, and knowing that no matter where you are currently, there's an ability to evolve and improve and alter yourself in a positive direction. So it's a more positive approach when you look at these group of patriarchs, to know that they start out no better than we and can reach a higher level.
I agree. I'm going to call on you in a minute, Brad. I just want to add, oftentimes it's through suffering. It's through suffering that they become more elevated. It gives them a deeper understanding of themselves or something else. It doesn't come easy. It's not just because they get older. It's that they go through ordeals and then they get the wisdom. And that's, I think the Hasidim would say, you know, that's sometimes the purpose of suffering, is to elevate, illuminate, and understand, because it's really hard to understand why we would suffer. Brad.
Well, what I'm struggling with is, how do you connect the two parts of the dream? The part dealing with the ladder, the angels ascending, descending, and then the promise of the land. So what is the connection there between the two?
Well, I think what's the connect, I mean, he has the dream of you can be this way or that way, and this is your potential blessing. The reason I say potential blessing, if we look at the text, which we're going to finish, Jacob he says, oh, God is here and I didn't even know it. So he's not particularly spiritually developed. You know what I mean? He's hearing this message. What's he going to do with it? And what he says, we're going to look in a second. He says, well, if this comes true, I'll believe in God. He doesn't, which already shows me there's something wrong with him. He can't even accept it. He can't even, it's to me, it's like if you elevate yourself, these are the blessings, but he doesn't even accept them unconditionally. Let's just look at that and then talk about that for a second. Hold on a minute, share screen.
The first modern skeptic.
Yeah, I guess you could say skeptic. All right, share. All right. He says, how awesome is this place? There is none other than this is none other than the abode of God, and that is a gateway to heaven. Okay, fine. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set up it as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. That's how you kind of anoint and make a place a holy place. He named the place Bethel, the house of God, but previously the name had been Luz. And then he says, Jacob then makes a vow saying, if God remains with me, if he protects me on this journey that I am making and gives me bread to eat and clothing to wear, hold on, and if I return safe to my father's house, the Lord shall be my God. And this stone, which I have set up as a pillar, shall be God's abode, and all that you gave me, I will set aside a tithe for you. So, wow. What do you make of that? Okay, Courtney.
Unmuted. It seems overly transactional and off balance too. He's saying, well, like, okay, fine, then I will do all of this for you, when I think the more common assumption is that God would be doing for you.
Right, but he's saying, if you do all this, you'll be my God.
Yeah, almost like you're lucky that I'm making this choice, God.
I'm testing you, God. Prove it. Words, but prove it. Okay, yes, Cindy.
Well, this is only the third generation with the concept of God. So I think he's just still trying to figure it out. And I don't know if you're real. You need to prove it to me.
Okay, yes. But he had this amazing blessing. So otherwise, if he doesn't get how many people even today go, well, I asked God, I prayed to God, and it didn't happen. So I don't believe in God anymore. I mean,
because we don't accept that God can say no.
Well, yeah, we don't accept that God can say no. And he's kind of saying, well, if you're going to make all these blessings, and it's not just like you're going to get the land. It's not the blessing that we thought was very generous. It's like, well, if I have clothes, if I have food, if I have a good life, all right, then you can be my God. I find that amazing. Okay, Pamela.
Well, 2 thoughts. First, how arrogant, right? Like, the honor of my worshiping you is, so august that you should, do all the things first before I take those steps. But putting the arrogance aside, could it also be that it's more like this God shall be my God, as opposed to, remember that we're living in a world of a lot of competition for God right now, right?
Yes.
So maybe what he's saying is, I'll pick you as the one I worship, as opposed to these other four, if you prove to me that you're the right one for me. And I'm making it a little nicer than it comes off being, right? To say, well, maybe you're not the right God for me if these good things don't happen. But it also could be well, I've got this one, this bit of disinformation, coming at me, and I'll believe, what do I believe, that disinformation, or do I believe this information? Where is the truth? How do I discern truth in this world? And then capital T, ultimate truth.
Oh my God,
And
sounds
he's
like
just
a
setting
date.
up the parameters of what is the ultimate truth for him. That's sort of the kindest thing I can put, other than just saying it's an arrogant, entitled kind of millennial attitude.
And, Abraham never put that condition on God, and Isaac never put that condition on God. Esau didn't even put that condition on God, but Jacob did. So again, we're looking
And
at
Abraham almost killed his son, right? So he never
told him to. I mean, we don't have to agree with that, but he never said, if you do this or that, I'll believe in you. There was never any test for the faith or the belief. Maybe Abraham went too far. I mean, I personally, God,
yeah, that's what I'm saying is maybe it's well, he didn't test him enough because he went off to kill his son in blind faith. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Okay, yes, Susan.
Yes, I'm going to lower the hand. Okay. So, I mean, there's several things, really good, all points brought up. The first thing, Jeff, you're back again. So I don't think they all came out of being flawed. I think the one who did it the most was Joseph. And to me, he's the real hero, of the biggest hero. And we don't get Israel named after him. We get it after Jacob, I guess maybe because he struggled. But Isaac was okay. He was a stay at home. He was almost Abraham, just as Pamela said, went to kill his son, and then he's a good guy afterwards because he bargains for the plot of his wife, who died because he was going to kill the son. So I don't see him as such a heroic figure.
So you're in the minority. I mean, in the Orthodox world and in the Christian world, he is revered for that faith.
Okay, so that's
obedience. I mean, we don't agree. I agree with you, but that is not the common view. It's this is a man of true faith who believed, and perhaps he believed God wouldn't go through with it. We it's such a great story. We could take, a few weeks on that alone. But anyway, just wanted to point that.
That was it. And then another point brought up by Brad, which I think we're dealing with. I mean, my BA was in psychology. My parents were psychologists. So I would have looked at the Torah as, as a personal dream, that this is wish fulfillment or, fears or whatever it is. But now I'm looking at it as a spiritual or mystical thing. And those of you who have experienced death and of someone, not your own, obviously, and then had that deceased loved one come to you in dreams. And I've had other people say that there's an element of spirituality in there. And I've talked to rabbis about it, and they say they don't discount visions and dreams. It's not all wish fulfillment necessarily. I think there are two ways to, there are many ways to look at the Torah, historical, but psychological, but also spiritually, see what the spiritual message is.
Oh, absolutely. Brad, do you have your little hand up? Does that mean you're?
Yeah, well, I wanted to just pick up on what, who was it? Somebody used, Courtney used the word transactional, I think it was, am I correct? And I think that's important because after all, the covenant is a contract. We forget that. It has mutual obligations. So I think it's perfectly appropriate to be laying out our side of the contract. I don't think that there's, when you enter into a contract, it is a negotiation process. And that's what our faith is based on. But I hate to belabor the point, but I come back to the dream itself. And within the dream, I still fail to see the connection between the angels going up and down the ladder and then the promise for the land. What is that connection?
Well, if you go with one of the interpretations that there are different angels for different locations, that the angels of the land of Canaan are leaving, the angels of the land of Aram are going to be with you as you go out. So then God is saying, yes, you're leaving and I'm sending different angels with you, but don't worry, you're coming back. I'm holding this for you. It's still yours. You're running away now, but you're not losing it, is how.
Okay, so the vertical movement in the dream corresponds to the horizontal movement of people in reality.
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay.
So now we move to like one of the most famous love stories in the Torah between Jacob and Rachel. Certain elements of what happens here have affected how Jewish weddings are performed to this day. So let's look at this story now. We have some time. Yes. Okay. All right. And he is. Okay. So let me just move this over here. Let me move this up. So Jacob resumed his journey and came to the land of the Easterners, which is, Aram. Okay, so who would like to read this about Jacob and Rachel? Who would like to read? All right, Susan, go ahead.
There before his eyes was a well in the open. 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it, but the flocks were watered from that well. The stone in the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the stone would be rolled from the mouth of the well and the sheep watered. Then the stone would be put back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My friends, where are you from?" And they said, "We're from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "Yes, we do." He continued, "Is he well?" They answered, "Yes, he is. And there's his daughter, Rachel, coming with the flock." And he said, "It is still broad daylight, too early to round up the animals. Water the flock and take them to pasture." But they said, "We can't until all the flocks are rounded up. Then the stone is rolled off the mouth of the well and we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. Like deja vu, right? And
yeah, with Rebecca.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yes, right. You're correct. But they said, "We can't." Okay, where are we? Well,
Jacob saw Rachel.
Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his uncle, his mother's brother, Laban, and the flock of his uncle Laban. Jacob went up and rolled the stone off the mouth of the well and watered the flock of his uncle Laban. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and broke into tears.
Okay, so first of all, what I understood from this is that they have to wait till all the shepherds get there because the big rock on the well is too heavy to move yourself. So everybody has to show up, all the shepherds, and they all lift this huge, stone that's covering the well because it protects it and, preserves it and whatever. And when Jacob saw Rachel, he lifted up that rock all by himself because he was so inspired by her beauty. And he kissed her on the mouth, which is pretty amazing, and started crying. And, this is considered this very powerful love story, moment of love at first sight. Jake and Rachel, by the way, means a little ewe lamb, by the way. So she's like, beautiful and delicate, probably. I mean, I imagine her with long hair and, whatever. And he's so moved by her. And it's not to help everybody else, it's to help her. And he moves the stone. So the well is a symbol of very many meetings in the Torah. When Abraham sends his servant to go find a wife for his son Isaac, he meets her at the well. Jacob meets Rachel at the well. Moses meets his wife Zipporah at the well. As you know, Miriam manifests a well wherever she goes, according to the Midrash. All through the desert, wherever Miriam was, there was a well, and when she died, the well disappeared and there was no water. So what do you think is the symbolism of the well in the Torah? What do you think the well stands for?
Women, the womb.
The womb, women. Yeah, okay.
It's a love story between all the ones that you mentioned, but it also has resonance, for you speaking of Freudianism, but also in the Kabbalah of the womb, the well-being of the womb. It's dark. It's shaped like the womb. It's life-sustaining. It's watery. All of these things.
Okay. Yeah. Pamela?
I think it's fertility, right? It's fertility, which is prosperity, because it not only represents the physical human body, but it's also waters all the land and all the crops, because this was agrarian and it feeds the animals. And so, but I also think that interestingly, thousands of years later, we look at water as the carrier of emotion. So we had all these love stories about a well, and water is the thing that they talk about is like the fluids in your body, and the emotion, our emotional life is often represented with water, and rough waves or cold or hot or all
rocky. It's rocky, stormy, the relationship or whatever. Also, the water breaks when you give birth. So it's also the birth water. So the well it's a very feminine image, and it seems to only be attributed to women. We only talk about wells. And the one time, this just came to me, that there's no woman at the well. Yeah, life depends on water, Phyllis and Warren said, but it's so interesting. What do you make of this? The one time there is no woman connected to a well, with water, is when Moses hits the rock, and he's supposed to speak to the rock, and he hits the rock and water comes out. And for that, apparently he's punished, and he's not allowed to go into the land of Israel because he hits this well or this source of water. And that's the only time we hear about sources of water like that without a woman connected to it. So I don't know. Anyway, so I don't know, that just struck me that's interesting. And there's punishment and there's like violence in a way, only in that one instance that I can think of. Everywhere else, it's a very sort of gentle, nurturing, watering, natural thing. So that's how they meet. Okay, so now.
That's a great love story. That's a great one.
Now we meet the sort of villain or dark character in the story. It's Lavan, who, if you remember, when the servant Eliezer, we believe he was, came with his sister to their house, and Lavan saw all the riches and all of the gold and gifts that he had, he was very excited and very welcoming, and to the servant. Now, Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. On hearing the news of his sister's son, Jacob, Laban ran to greet him. He embraced him and kissed him and took him into the house. And he told Laban all that happened. So I just want to tell you, according to Rashi and the other commentary, he kissed him, but he was feeling him to see if he had gold and jewels in his pockets. he was going, oh, where's the money? Where are the gifts? Where are the whatever? But he came with nothing. He just ran away. He had nothing. And so that was a disappointment. But we sort of connect Lavan to greed from the very beginning. And he doesn't seem to disappoint us as we go forward in the story. So then, okay. And Lavan said to him, you are truly my bone and flesh. Okay, when he had stayed for him for a month's time. Okay, who wants to read here? Lavan said to Jacob. Who would like to read?
I'd like to read.
Okay.
Laban said to Jacob, just because you are a kinsman, you should serve me for nothing. Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes. Rachel was shapely and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel, so he answered, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban said, better than I give her to you than that I should give her to an outsider. Stay with me.
So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. This idea of a love is very rare in the Torah. We don't really see it anywhere else where there is a love story. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time is fulfilled, that I may cohabit with her. It says, and I will go to her. And Laban gathered all the people of the place and made a feast. And when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and he cohabited with her. And he went to her. And Laban had given his maidservant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her maid. And when the morning came, there was Leah. So he said to Laban, what is it that you have done to me? I was in your service for Rachel. Why did you deceive me? I want to see what the Hebrew is. And why did you deceive me? And Laban said, it is not the practice of in our place to marry off the younger before the older. Okay. So what does this deception remind us of? What does this deception remind us of that happened to Jacob partook?
Deception to his father.
Just like Jacob pretended to be the older, and he tricked his father. Now he's tricked by getting the wrong wife, by getting Leah instead of Rachel. What's interesting is it says in the morning. So obviously he didn't see her face during the whole wedding. He didn't see her face. I guess they were in the dark in the tent or whatever. And if you've ever looked at Yemenite wedding veils or wedding things, it can be like a whole thing of coins or silver, hangings of jewels or whatever, covering the face of the bride. So today, if you're observant and you have a wedding, Jewish wedding, you have what's called the bedekin, which is where the groom comes in and looks at the bride before they put the veil on. And he goes, oh yeah, it's Rachel, it's not Leah. And he helps her put on the veil. Okay, today the veils are see-through, but at that time, so that the groom actually, because of this story, now is part of the Jewish wedding ceremony is to check to make sure you've got the right girl. Yes, Cindy.
With Rebecca, we learned that the bride has to give permission for the marriage. So does that mean Leah agreed to this?
Maybe, because it says let's go back to this idea of her weak eyes, or what does that mean about her eyes? What do you imagine they mean when they say she had weak eyes? What do you think that means?
Oh, I heard that she was cross-eyed.
You heard she was cross-eyed. Okay. I heard, according to Rashi, she had watery eyes, red eyes, bloodshot eyes, because she had been told that she was destined to marry Esau. And so she was crying so much. And so that means, no, she didn't, first of all, the idea that a daughter has to give permission came in Talmudic times based on this story. It doesn't mean at the time of the story, you had to give permission. It's only later when the rabbis look back and they said, aha, you see, therefore you can't force a daughter. And they were much more enlightened in those
But
years.
Laban was present when Rebecca gave her permission as her brother.
Right. Well, Rebecca was a strong girl. Well, he was just her brother. He wasn't her father.
But he probably witnessed it.
He witnessed it, but doesn't mean he seems to be the, rule the roost and push his daughters around because they were a little afraid of him. And I'm sure Leah, well, she did love him. She loved him very much. It wasn't reciprocated. And, she cries about that. And it says God saw that she was unloved and gave her a lot of children because she was unloved. And she's always trying to win Jacob's love. And always loved Rachel. That's who he really loved. So I'm sure if it was a choice between Esau and Jacob, she would be, another commentary says that Rachel, I don't know if it's true, it's a midrash, she agreed to this. She said, okay, my older sister has to get married, so she can go first. And then, because what happens is Lavan says, well, wait a week till the 7, it's over, the wedding's over, and then you'll marry Rachel, and then you'll work for me another 7 years. But he doesn't wait another 7 years to marry her. He just marries her a week later and then works another 7 years for her. So you see, Lavan is a trickster and greedy, and Jacob is kind of getting payback for what he did. So, and he does do it. Any questions? Another idea about Leah is that her eyes, the word rakot can mean weak, it can mean soft, that she was just nearsighted. I never heard cross-eyed, but that would be very unattractive, especially if a woman in those years, all you saw, a veiled woman, probably a married woman or whatever, it was just her eyes, because you veiled, in public, all you ever saw were her eyes. Yes, Miriam.
We also heard that Leah comes from the Hebrew word heavy. Yeshayahu says, no, 18 and so, I am too tired to carry this. This is too heavy a burden for me. Mil 80, I am fatigued. And so, from the word naso, to carry. So they said that the word Leah is related to this because Leah means heavy burden. From crying so much, Layot and Leah mean heavy, as into time.
Just didn't have her eyes were in some way not attractive, not beautiful.
Right.
And they also say Rachel was shapely. She had a beautiful curvy body. She was beautiful, and he wanted to, and it just shows you that it's interesting that beauty in a woman is, a commodity. It always is a commodity, but that God, we may not get to it, but it says God saw that Leah was unloved, and so he blessed her with children, so that beauty is not a value, for God. It's like your goodness or your, your behavior, but your beauty, Rachel suffered and God blessed Leah. In the story, or the writers of the story are saying, beauty did not protect Rachel from suffering, from infertility, from anything. So that there may be a subliminal message that, being beautiful does not get you a free pass in life, which it usually does, as we know in this world. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering if there's the concept of the eyes being the gateway of the soul, right? And so maybe it's really just another way of saying he didn't have a soul connection with Leah, because we're looking for our soulmate even to this day, right? So if this is the mythology of the love story and love at first sight, then you're looking at the soul connection that existed with him and Rachel, and it's just maybe not a slight to Leah per se, but just to say he didn't have that soul connection with her the way he had with Rachel.
Well, yeah, he started crying and kissed her. He had a big connection with her right away. You know what I mean? It was like he broke down. He was so moved by her beauty, by her, whatever it was about her, and he couldn't do enough for her.
So I guess what I'm just saying is maybe it's not a slight to Leah that she was unattractive or flawed in some way, but she just wasn't his soulmate because it just wasn't that. Something sort of a little romantic maybe.
I think you're right. I think there are people that we say, he's a really nice person, just not for me. The same thing. So I just want to, of course we could go on and on, but I wanted to show you one other thing that I found. I wasn't happy about seeing this with Jacob. And it just sort of, to me, portends the suffering he's going to get. Where it says, okay, so Leah had all these sons. It says, the Lord saw that Leah was unloved and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. This is right here where my marker is. And she had Reuben, and then she had Shimon, and then she had, Judah. And here, this is the part I want to outline, which I was not happy. When Rachel saw that she had borne Jacob no children, she became envious of her sister, and Rachel said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Jacob was angry at Rachel and said, can I take the place of God who has denied you fruit of the womb? I mean, that is such a cruel response. She's crying, I'm going to die, and literally die, or one commentary says, my name will die out. I'll have no one, no child of mine to carry my memory, to have grandchildren through or anything. I'm going to disappear. And he says, well, what do you want from me? If God doesn't want you to, suddenly God is in charge of everything. He gave God conditions, but now suddenly it's well, if God's not giving it to you. And I just want to point out that Yitzchak prayed for Rebecca to have, when she was barren, he prayed to God, and then she conceived of twins. So we have to look at Jacob as a very mixed bag, I think. Does anybody want to say anything about that before we conclude, in terms of what kind of, it's interesting that he's the one we're the children of, this guy who, as Jeff said, we have an opportunity to get better and better. And he goes up and down, sort of like the angels on the ladder. Anything else anyone would like to say before we finish? Pam,
Just one little thought about that, which is to say, you wonder if what he's basically saying is, I'm having sex with you and I'm having sex with Leah. What do you want me to do about it? I can't do anything more than what I'm already doing. And so I wonder if, or maybe is Rachel really saying, why aren't you having sex with me so that we can have a baby? Or maybe he's saying, but we are, and nothing's happening. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know, I'm being too literal about it,
Well, I just want to end with this. In the book of Samuel, Hannah who ends up being the mother of Samuel. She also has a sister wife named Peninnah, and Peninnah has children and Hannah doesn't, and she's very sad. And her husband Elchanan says, oh, Hannah, isn't my love more than 10 sons? He tries to comfort her. He says, I love you more than 10 sons could comfort you. And Isaac immediately prays for Rebecca. It says, and he was angry at her for crying about it to him. It's what do you want me to do about it? So of course they were having sex because she was his favorite, but I just think he's being insensitive, and he's not. So basically Jacob's rather a jerk.
Yes. Definitely.
And you know what happens? He suffers a lot. His daughter gets raped, his son gets taken away. It's really a lesson about, if we don't become more spiritually elevated, like Jeff said, if we don't improve, it's going to come back harder and harder until finally we get the message of how to behave. Yes, Brad.
He's also the last of our forefathers that marries within his tribe.
That's
And
true.
maybe that's why.
Maybe because as we know, when we bless our children, our sons, we say, may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh, and they are Joseph's sons. And he did marry an Egyptian wife, by the way, but those are the only two brothers that do not fight in the Torah, are Joseph's sons. So you have a point there. So I want to wish you all Shabbat Shalom. It was great to study with you, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Here's to marrying in a tribe.
Jeff, you're still on. How do you feel, Jeff?
I feel fine, thank you.
I know you've been through a couple of surgeries, haven't you?
Yeah. Last one was in early May, and I'm doing okay. You know, my wife continues to abuse me regularly, so I'm surviving
That's
that.
part of your recovery.
Oh, I see. That's a training camp. Good.
We're glad you're okay, Jeff. We're glad you're, hi,
You're
Mary.
looking well. Are
Yeah.
you here or in Nevada?
I'm in Las Vegas, and I'll be going back to Los Angeles to visit my kids soon for the holidays.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Be well. I'll write a song and say a prayer.
Well,
Excellent.
Will you
Appreciate
be
the
there
love.
for Thanksgiving, Jeff?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
hopeful.
lovely.
Yeah.
right.
So, you know, there's only one important thing that we all share together, or should. It's the love of family.
That's right.
Yes.
Even at their
Wonderful.
worst, they're better than
You
most.
should all take a moment out during that very joyous holiday. Just concentrate. I do it, and with the whole group. My daughter's making Thanksgiving 20 years, and we stop everything, we stop our eating, and we take a spiritual moment out together. We all talk about what we're grateful for. It's quite a lovely idea.
Well, it's quite interesting that if you have family and you've shared many, many events with them, to see the changes, the growth, the emotional qualities of those people in your family, and the reasons that you wish to continue to share, hopefully, are there.
Of course. And I'm motivated by gratitude every day of my life. I mean, how can I not be? I'm 95, and if I sprint out of bed and I'm vertical, that in itself, to me, is Dayenu. It's already Dayenu.
You look beautiful, Mary.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. Close up, I look about 105. But at any rate, I'm so grateful because you need to take time out, even from our daily, everyday, mundane, frenetic, crazy existence. You need to take a few moments out. I don't mean to sound preachy, but I do feel it's very important.
It's not just the learning that's important. It's the fact that as a group, even though we're separated by time and space, we're sharing concerns, love, information, and you know, it's a rare commodity to continue to be involved with people who share similar kindnesses and belief.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Jeff, my family is far away, but I'm playing music in memory of their dad and grandpa, and to bring the family together. And I want a residency in Vegas, and I think it's going to happen. And this Wilshire Boulevard Temple is my family here forever. And I love you. I'm glad you're getting better. Tell your wife I said hello. This is the LA lady. Bye, Merle. I got to go. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shalom, dear. Jeff, where does your sister live? What area? Rather, where does your daughter live?
My daughter lives in Tarzana,